Welcome to the 10-Minute Treasurer. My name is Jeff Pospisil, and this is the start of my foundation series on setting up a church foundation. And I'm going to give you my top 3 reasons why a church might want to do that. By the way, I'm not a guy that likes overly complicated systems or red tape or bureaucracy, but there are good, valid reasons why you might want to set up a church foundation. By the way, the whole entire reason I'm doing this series is because of this church here. It's Grand Forks Wesley United Methodist Church. And they set up their church foundation a number of years back, and they did such a good job. They sent me their bylaws / articles of incorporation, and I made it into a template, and I'm just going to walk through that. It was just really well done. Just a little background on what we're talking about. So most churches are set up as a nonprofit corporation, so they have their own corporate umbrella, and all their different ministries fall underneath that. So when you talk about the food pantry that's run out of there, that is, in this case, Grand Forks Wesley United Methodist Church. The youth is not its own separate entity, it's Grand Forks United Methodist Church. So it's all under that corporate umbrella. Well, a church foundation, you set that up, and then it has its own corporate umbrella. And it's not a simple process. You do need to go through the legal steps to get it set up. And here's just a gist of what you're going to have to go through. So in setting it up, you're going to have to file the articles of incorporation, and I'll try to include the template in the description, that link to that. A pretty cheap process, not overly difficult, especially if you have a template. Filing for the tax ID is not that hard. That's a form SS4. I think that's just an online form now. I don't even know if you can file a paper form anymore. The one that might be a little bit more complicated is the 501c3 status. So in my mind, if you're a foundation that all you are is investing and caring for the gifts after the church receives them, you probably don't need to be recognized as a 501c3. I don't know why you would. But if you are receiving, if the church foundation is receiving the gifts, you might have to apply with the form 1023 to be recognized as a 501c3. You could also try to work through the denomination to see if they'll recognize your church foundation as a 501c3 as well. And then lastly, and this is kind of a pain, this is the ongoing pain. So it's the annual reporting. The Secretary of State thing is not tough, but if you do file as a 501c3 and you're recognized as a 501c3, you got to file that annual 990, and that is a pain. So the number 3 reason that you might consider setting up a church foundation is protecting assets from lawsuits. So churches have a lot of exposure to litigation. I mean, people could slip on the sidewalk on the way to church. Recently, we had this Boy Scout thing where Boy Scouts troops were using the church, and a handful of them had sexual misconduct. Well, that opens up your church towards liability. And what a foundation would do is it would at least make those less likely to be used to settle any lawsuit. So they're more likely to be better documented, and a little bit of a corporate veil there to help protect those assets. And speaking of protecting assets, the number 2 reason is protecting assets from the church. And you might say, why would you need to protect assets from the church? Well, this is what I see, is that a lot of times the church will receive a large gift, and they don't have a foundation, so the trustees manage it, or the finance committee, or the administrative council, and they got a lot of concerns of their own, and they, like, if an emergency comes up or a big opportunity comes up, they can see that money there, and they all of a sudden justify using more than they should, or maybe they bend the donor intent, and it becomes like that cookie jar. And we've actually had churches talk about their funds like it's a cookie jar. And if you're like me and you see the cookies there, you're going to be tempted to go back and back and back until it's depleted. The church foundation acts as self-control. It is building in self-control into the system where they know they're there to support the ministry of the church, but they're also there to guard donor intent. And they're also there to make sure those funds last a lifetime. And so their self-control is built into the system to make sure that we don't impulsively use up those funds. And the number one reason that I would give you for setting up a church foundation is that they are going to be focused on multiplying the assets for the church. A lot of times the church has a lot on their plate, and looking at their investment returns is not high priority for them. So maybe they just have their funds in a CD because it's easy. Maybe it's in a money market. Maybe it's in an Edward Jones account. They really don't know what the rate of return is. Well, a foundation, because they have a limited scope of duties, and this is a very high important duty, is to look at those returns. And they're going to look at getting a good return and multiplying that money for the church. I hope this video was a help to you. And again, I will put the link to the template in the description. And I'm going to spend the next several weeks walking through that template so that you can understand it and hopefully customize it to meet your own church's needs. God bless you.